Well, family, I am so pumped to be here at Momentum Cafe with all of you for our friendly chat about a number of issues. But here's what I want to do to kick this thing off, because it's going to get good real quick. I can feel it. Why don't we introduce ourselves? And what I want to do is give me a little bit of your faith tradition, your background a little bit, and maybe even where you serve now. And we just going to roll this thing out. So I'm going to start with you over here, brother.
Okay. Well, I'm Quincy Riker, Cochran. I grew up Baptist. Grew up good, deep Baptist. Went to Salem Baptist Church of Chicago.
Okay, Quincy, it's okay.
I know.
Yeah, right.
I grew up at Salem Baptist Church of Chicago, Reverend Meeks, on the south side of Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm one of you all's worship pastors. So.
What campus are you primarily?
I'm at South Barrington.
Okay. Well, I grew up, Quincy, slightly different metropolis, Des Moines, Iowa.
Wow.
Yes,
Right.
Des Moines, Iowa, on the north side. And my family was from Mississippi, but moved up shortly before I was born. So my world was quite multi-ethnic, Asian, Latino, white and black in my community. I serve today at Willow Creek North Shore as a campus pastor and also have a chance to be influential on our teaching team as well.
Appreciate it.
It's good to be here.
Love
Right.
it. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. With my brethren. Well, I was born and raised on the south side.
South side.
South side of Chicago.
Yeah, represent.
Represent. And also came up in the Baptist church. My grandfather was a Baptist preacher, activist. And so that was the tradition, and it was very, very close-knit. After service, you go in the basement and you have dinner and breakfast,
right.
whatever.
You're serving that meal.
You know what I mean? Those meals after church, the soul food situation.
Got fed.
Smelling them during
Yes,
the service.
yes, I miss it. But
Got
so
fed and got fed.
yeah,
That's right.
right. You get spiritually fed and then physically
That's right.
fed.
That's it.
So yeah, very much a rich time with that. Yeah, growing up.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So I'm the campus pastor here in Chicago. All right, my name is Thomas, and I'm kind of a mixed bag. So my grandmother was Baptist.
Wow.
And so I get to get fed because
Right.
we do that every Sunday. But when I got saved, it was Church of God in Christ, Kojic.
I'm sorry.
Kojic. Oh, no, listen.
Get
That was me
delivered.
too. I didn't say that, but yes.
No, listen, that's
Church
it,
Down in
Kojic.
There it is.
Okay? You got to be born in that.
I was about to say.
Listen, we can sing it. So Church of God in
Can't
Christ,
join
man.
it.
I love it. That's
You gotta
right.
be born in.
You got to be born in.
got
And
to.
so
You got to.
really I learned. But then I experienced, I explored. I was with AME, African Methodist, Episcopal, a little bit, did some stuff there. But Kojic, that's the roots.
That's home.
Well, we've just established just a tad bit about some of the spiritual backgrounds that we have. But it's interesting as we think about this time of year. I always say it's the 60 days out of the year. It's okay to be black in America. But we're moving into Black History Month. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't pause and just reflect a little bit about what does it mean to you to celebrate Blackness? What does Black history mean to you? Maybe we could start with you, Thomas.
Yeah, I like that. So, and in my life, I feel like it meant different things at different times. Because when I lived, and I'm from New York City, South Bronx, so when I was there in that culture, it just was assumed we were black because everyone around us was either black or Dominican, or some form of Latino. And then I moved into some white spaces, and so then I started having some identity questions, wrestling with who I am, and so then it meant a little bit more or less at times. But all that to say is today, if I'm thinking Black history, for me, it is a chance to continue to remind people of the uniqueness of our people group. How we've helped shape this country, how we've helped mold this institution we have, the contributions that we often don't talk about. I think every time we talk about Blackness, it's always in chains. And while that's part of the story, that's not the entirety of the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good.
And so, just briefly, that's where I'm at there. It's just an opportunity to celebrate and explore and continue to rejoice in who we are.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I'm with you. It's looked different for me throughout the years, over the years. And I think in this year, I'm in a different space. I think when historically and traditionally, when I think of Black History Month, I think of words like resilient, strong. I think of, men and women like my grandfather who marched alongside Dr. King for our basic civil rights and who contributed so much to this country under very painful circumstances. And I think of those sacrifices. And while I honor and hold space, even still in this moment, I've just been thinking a lot about honoring our inherent value and that we are worthy, regardless of what we produce, that we are worthy and that we are valuable. Because I think there was a time in this country when sleeping and resting and joy and play, would literally put us in danger. Like we would be lynched or beat for laughing or for resting, get to work. And even growing up, I don't know if y'all can relate, but I would hear, you've got to work 10 times harder. You can't mess up.
That's it.
Don't screw up. You can't be mediocre. And so this narrative of carrying the weight on our shoulders, I think this year I'm thinking what it means to me is holding space for our humanity and our inherent value and worth, and that we are worthy of rest.
The fact that you said your grandfather, we're not going to talk about your age, but your grandfather walked with King. That's not that long ago.
Yeah.
It's not.
And for people to think, and this is what I was going to say with Ephesians, for people to think because laws change or rules change, that means hearts have changed, you bugging, right? Because in Ephesians, folks got saved and their hearts hadn't changed yet.
That's deep.
That's why Paul had to say, hey, Jew, hey, Gentile, knock it off. Y'all one now. Not one ethnicity, but you're one spiritual man now. Why? Because they weren't getting along. Rules changed. Their hearts hadn't yet.
Wow.
And so for people to think, because it's only been 54, 58 years, that hearts have changed, get out of here. Especially when it's been baked in. So I say that to say is in Ephesians, I find that Paul is fighting desperately for these two people groups who were at war with each other, who hated each other, right? Jews used to be like, I'm happy I'm not a woman and a Gentile. That's how they would talk. To now say you're one church. So when our culture is calling for us to exit white churches, which they are, folks, Black and brown people are leaving the white church at an alarming rate.
It's real.
Right now. I go back to Ephesians, and I'm not saying they're wrong. Don't hear me say that. And I'm not saying they're sinful. For me to stay, it's because I think we get to show off more of the kingdom when we wrestle together and still honor God. But it ain't easy. It costs something.
That's exactly
and at some point, you got to weigh out the cost.
True.
Because you can't lose yourself in this.
Man, what Black History Month means to me is preserving what's left of it.
Flesh that out, man. What you mean?
We get into this 1 month, and we try to compact everything and who we are into the sphere of just 30 days. And it's
28.
Actually, it's less than
28.
Well, see, I said I'm trying to extend it out.
29,
28.
depending on the year.
right. And only here.
And again, we get less of it.
Yeah.
How do you impact the world in 28 days? Or remind the world of how much of an impact we've made in 28 days and where it's acceptable for your Blackness to be on Front Street. When it's not accepted for the other 345 days? My math, I went to public school, it's okay. Chicago public schools. How do you squish that into 28 days? So I think that's what I mean by keeping it and extending it and being present in it and reminding people of what being Black is and the culture that we have and why it is such a rich history, why it is something to be preserved. Everything from the cooking all the way down to the marching, to the singing, to everything that encompasses us, the different shades of Blackness, the different sounds of Blackness.
That's right.
Everything from worship all the way to just drums, to just lamenting. In regards, again, this is so much to encompass in 28 days. But how do you do that without it being too much for some people? So what Black History Month means to me is preserving and extending what and who we are to people who don't necessarily care too much about it.
And I feel like Black history is American. Like it's,
It is.
you know,
it is American.
we've shaped so much.
There'd be no America without Blacks.
Yeah, Black history.
That's
right.
That's a whole.
But I love what you said, and I don't want to hear from Ed, but I love what you said. Basically, how can we be our full selves without that offending someone else? And just that weight a little bit, that tension of like, if I'm fully me, I got to now care about how you feel about that.
Exactly.
Ooh,
I got to answer to somebody else.
man, appreciate that vulnerability. Ed?
Wow, I think the very definition of Black history is complicated. There's those two words, Black and history, and who gets to define it? You know, Blackness is something that is, I feel, a love story. I feel like it is also a story of suffering. It's a story of confusion because you needed to have a month to even draw attention to.
Right.
It's been a story that has at times been hijacked, leased,
Yep.
and then owned. And so when you think about Blackness, for me, just words, people come to mind.
Sure.
Whether it's Douglas or Du Bois, you know, whether it is, you know, in recent times, Poitier, or, you know, these people who made these unique contributions. And history is often told, particularly for us, through art.
That's good.
And that's beautiful. I think that art often tells the story that words can't. And because we didn't have access to certain lines of, I mean, how can you tell the American story without Marvin Gaye?
You can't.
Has there ever been a more passionate person on the stage talking about love?
Come on.
What's going on?
Yeah.
How can you talk about music without talking about Coltrane and how he shared the depths, both the blues and the highs of, well, it's because art tells oftentimes a story for us that words are too painful to express. So Black history for us is a varied experience. And as I think our conversation will show, Black history is, as Sharon said, uniquely our history.
Absolutely.